Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever wondered what actually goes on inside a tarot reading? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain. We're going to follow a single, complete session from the very first card shuffle all the way to that final big reveal. So to do that, we're going to follow a reading between Lucy, she's the experienced tarot reader, and her client, Susan. Now, this is Susan's first time, so she's curious but maybe a little skeptical. It's the perfect way to demystify this whole ancient practice. All right, let's dive right in. First, we need to set the scene. Before a single card even hits the table, the atmosphere, the vibe, is so important. So let's meet the people and the place that are at the center of all this. So the reading is happening at Lucy's own tarot parlor, which she calls the other side. She set this place up back in 2020 to be this really welcoming, spiritually focused space. And you can't forget about the resident cat, Casey, who's kind of like the atmospheric companion to the whole thing. Okay, so once the scene is set, we get to the ritual itself. And, this is way more than just randomly pulling some cards out of a deck. It's actually a very specific step-by-step process, and it's all designed to help both the client and the reader really focus their energy. Susan decides to go with what's called a 3-card reading. Now, Lucy points out that there are tons of ways to interpret 3 cards. Past, present, future is a classic. But for this reading, they're going to stick to a really simple but powerful framework: situation, obstacle, and advice. So how do they actually pick the cards? Well, it's a whole thing. First, Susan puts her fingers on the deck and makes a silent wish, basically focusing her intent. Then, Lucy gives the cards a really good shuffle. After that, she scatters them all over the table in this loose pile. They call it the fishbowl. And the final step? Susan just has to choose 3 cards, letting her hand, as Lucy says, find the cards on its own. All right, the cards have been chosen. This is where the magic, or the psychology, really begins. The 3 cards are just sitting there, face down, holding this potential story. Now it's time for Lucy to turn them over one by one and start decoding the message. And here they are. For the situation, Susan picked the 6 of Cups. The obstacle? That's the Lover's card. And for advice, she got the 9 of Swords. Wow. Okay, right off the bat, that's a pretty intense combination. So let's break down exactly what the spread is trying to tell us. Okay, let's start with card number 1, the situation. This is the 6 of Cups. Think of this as the foundation of the reading, the card that's all about what's happening in Susan's life right now. So, first thing Lucy explains is a really key distinction. This card is from what's called the minor arcana. These are the cards that deal with the everyday stuff, the daily trials and tribulations of life. They're not the big, earth-shattering life lessons. We'll get to those later. And you see, every card has these different layers. This one is from the suit of Cups, which is all about emotions, relationships, and intuition. Then you've got the number 6, which points to a pretty strong influence. So you put that all together, and it suggests Susan's current situation is all tied up with some deep-seated family stuff or maybe a really powerful connection from her past. Okay, now we move to the middle card. This is the big one, the obstacle. And wow, this one is a totally different beast from the first card. So her obstacle is the Lover's card. And this one is from the major arcana. Remember how the minor arcana was about daily life? Well, the major arcana cards are the heavy hitters. Lucy calls them anchor cards because they represent these huge life lessons, these big archetypal themes that really define our journey. What this means is that Susan's obstacle isn't just some little hurdle. No, it's a major life theme, and it's all about the important people she's tied to. The Lover's card is about harmony, relationships, choices, and Lucy immediately sees a strong connection back to that first card. She thinks this points directly to a super significant person in Susan's family. All right, that brings us to the final card in the spread, the advice. So with this situation rooted in family history and a major obstacle involving a key relationship, what does the 9 of Swords say she should do about it? And, this is a heavy one. We're back in the minor arcana, but this is the suit of Swords, which is all about the mind, communication, and conflict. And the number is a 9. That's almost the highest you can get, so its influence is huge. The meaning is pretty blunt. Lucy says it translates to, you aren't sleeping, you're terrified of what happens if you let your guard down. Now, the reading could have totally just ended right there, but the first three cards hit so close to home for Susan that Lucy felt like there was still one more piece to the puzzle. So she suggests pulling one more card, called a clarifier, just to get a little more insight on where this is all headed. Susan's on board. And picking this card is really simple. Lucy just takes the very top card from the rest of the deck. The belief here is that its position isn't an accident. It's there for a very deep, almost ethereal reason. So what's the card? It's the Fool. And don't let the name fool you. This is actually a really positive major arcana card. It's all about new beginnings, innocence, taking a leap of faith. As a clarifier, it's basically saying, hey, a positive new start is possible if you're willing to take the chance. So the reading itself is done. But that just brings up the biggest question of all, right? What just happened here? Was that some kind of mystical, divine message? Or is this all just a really clever way to get inside your own head? And this is where things get really interesting, because Lucy and Susan have two totally different takes on it. Lucy, the reader, is a firm believer. She says she wouldn't even be doing this if she didn't believe in some kind of divine forces at play. But Susan, she sees it more as a psychological tool, a way to kind of trick yourself into examining your life, almost like a placebo effect that gets you to listen to what you already know deep down. But here's the cool part. They both kind of agree on the end result. Whether it's magic or mindset, they both think the process is incredibly valuable. Because at the end of the day, it forces you to stop and look at your problems in a completely new light, which is something most of us just don't do. Which leaves us with this final thought. Is tarot a mystical tool, or is it more like a psychological mirror? Or maybe, just maybe, it's a little bit of both. And perhaps its real power isn't about getting all the answers, but about finally figuring out the right questions to ask yourself.